Glad that you're here with us on Morning Express. It's now time for the Newsroom. And the Newsroom is where we look at some of the big stories and how we have covered them as to whether we've done a good job and some of the angles that possibly we may have missed, and whether we've done a good job of breaking each and every one of them the way it should be done, and also ensuring that we are the watchdog of the people. And to have that conversation with me, we have a panel, and I'll start by introducing them. To my extreme left, we have David Ohito, who is digital editor with us here at the Standard. Great to have you, Mr. Ohito.
Thank you.
We also have Mwenda Kilemi, who is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi with the Communications Department.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. Last but not least, Clay Muganda, who is also an editor with us here in the Standard. Good to have you. It's been a while since we had you.
Yeah.
You've been gathering stories all over, eh? So I'm sure you have a lot.
No, just this, what's been covered is what I have too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Let me start with you, Mwenda Kilemi, and what is the big story that you have seen this week between last Wednesday and today? Is it still the teacher strike?
To me, the use of social media to spread the news. You talked about the death of the actress Kanana Gishuru.
Oh yes.
And social media had all kinds of stories about her, that she was drinking, all these things. And the other week there was a story by a guy called the activist Boniface Mwangi about the president. So there are all these stories coming out on social media that have no kind of control and can be quite damaging. Just a few months ago, somebody outed out a relationship. Some people were having an affair at Safaricom, and they were outed over WhatsApp, and that could be quite damaging to somebody's life and his economic future. So I think more needs to be looked at about this issue.
I think we could term it as possibly citizen journalism, where citizens literally have become journalists in one way or the other. And I guess we'll tackle that as we go along. Ohito, what was one of the big stories for you, or the biggest story this week?
Of course, for me, it's still been the teacher strike and press conference by the president very late on Sunday. Of course, there was the marking of second anniversary of Westgate terror attack, and of course our noisy elected leaders purporting to pray once every other occasion comes. So for me, those dominated the headlines somehow. Those could do for the week.
Okay,
sure.
For me, I mean, like, okay, fine. I think you need to start spending more time on mainstream media. Yeah, you sound very depressed. I think for me, the big story that actually has not been told is the way this government is mistreating children. Yeah. That is a big story.
So let's kick off with the teacher strike, because I guess that's where we are what you're alluding to. And have we not said that the child is being mistreated? Has that not?
No,
has that side of the story not been told?
It has not come out clearly, because what is happening is, I mean, over time, this is the first time actually you actually tear-gassed children in this. I mean, like that time you tear-gassed children. Then kids have this thing of like being happy about their performances and all that. Then you banned school, you banned school ranking. These kids can never be happier when the results come out. And then now you actually just told them you closed schools. What are these children supposed to do? And you're not, I mean, you're the parental authority as the government, and you're there flailing your arms, blaming another party. I mean, don't tell me about NAT. I mean, I don't pay my taxes to NAT. I pay my taxes to the government. If there's a problem, the government is supposed to solve it. You don't tell kids, I'm closing schools for your security, come back home and do what? What are they supposed to be doing?
But for us as the media, what is it that you could have done, or how would
I mean,
I think
we know we need to call out the government and tell. I mean, it needs to sort out this problem, because it's not. You don't tell me that the opposition is supposed to provide solutions, don't politic, provide solutions, don't take advantage of this. NAT is supposed to do this. I mean, no. I mean, we need to call out the government and tell them that this is your mess. You're supposed to sort it out, because you're the people. Actually, you have
to play the devil's advocate.
Yeah.
The issue about banning the rankings. You could argue that it was actually making more kids unhappy than happy, because what happens if you're not the top student?
I mean,
you go into depression, which was the case. Many kids are going into depression because they're not being ranked well.
Just a minute. And then, okay, fine, you ban that ranking, okay? Fine. You tell them we are not banning ranking because or I mean, you're going to be depressed and all that. Then, after you banned it, these kids, you deny them a chance to go into the schools that they wanted. You messed up the selection process completely.
Again, about that issue, it was a quota system that was to help public students who are competing unfairly against private
Yes, but at the same time, did you not say that actually private schools perform better? That private schools perform better. After they performed better, you deny them a chance to go to the schools
because they have more money to perform better.
Oh.
Okay. Unlike public students.
Okay.
Ohito, do you feel like we've told the full story of the teacher strike? Have we concentrated more on the union and the government and forgotten about the child who is suffering? The one
I would say that there are still gaps which we haven't done, and I would agree with Kilemi that the social media has done some plugging of the gaps in our journalism. Look, for example, no media house questioned why the president called a press conference late on a Sunday when there was nothing made public about his diary early in the day. I mean, why keep people anxious and come and say nothing or repeat the same things your ministers have been saying all the week? It didn't make a very big difference. And to make it worse, all due respect to His Excellency the President, he starts comparing Kenya to Burundi. I mean, on a week you came from Italy and you're going to the US. I think there are better examples that we expected to come from him. But Burundi, no. We don't want to be compared to failed states. I think Kenya is the biggest economy in the region. We have sober, well-trained workforce, and we need better examples even in terms of schooling.
Okay.
And there was a question mark about his figures, and I'm very proud of some of the journalists who picked out those erroneous figures.
Actually, hold that thought, because I have up sounds on, I have some of that info on what they exactly said, and I want us to also look at data journalism, which is something that we need to examine based on figures that are given. Do we just take those figures? Remember, not too long ago we had the polls, and those figures were just published. Are we doing our job to actually verify those figures and see whether they are correct? But first of all, if we can just have some of the comments that were made by the president.
Today earns a minimum of Kenya shillings 23,692, while the highest paid teacher, who took home then Kenya shillings 35,886, now today earns a minimum of Kenya shillings 140,089.
This is the payslip, and the payslip indicates basic salary 16,692. Where did they get a figure of 23,000 to cheat Kenya?
So there you have it, facts and figures. The president says they earn 23,000. Sosion comes out with the payslip and says he earns 16,000. After going into the details, you find that one is talking about gross, the other one is talking about net. Mwenda Kilemi, do we take time as journalists to poke or at least verify the figures before we let the public know?
I think we do, but we could do a better job at it. Statisticians will tell you that you can make numbers say anything. You can make numbers anything you want them to say. And especially when it comes to polling, we need to ask questions like how big was the polling sample, how are the questions asked, what kind of people were asked, what is their demographics. Those kinds of questions need to be asked, especially about polling. I've seen that as a problem. I can go and look for certain people who will give me certain answers. So, I mean, that needs to be explored more.
Okay. Clay, the government has consistently said these are the figures, but Sosion has come out and said that the president was misled.
Yeah, I think, okay, I looked at those figures, what the president was talking about and what Sosion gave. Actually, there's a minimum and a maximum. I think what there's a range between 16,000 and 23. Yeah. And the numbers that were quoted during the State to the Nation was the maximum, and the payslip that Sosion gave was for the minimum. And actually, I think I would believe the Sosion one because it's for just July. I don't think there's been a pay increase between July and now to get to the maximum amount that a teacher at the entry level is supposed to earn. So I would go with Ocean's figures. Yeah, but I think when it comes to the figures that were given on Sunday, I think we did a very good job, because that speech was actually, they just collected what has been in the press for the whole week, is what they collected, and that's what he was talking about on Sunday. And I think we did a good job, because yesterday Ashiundu actually called out and gave out a breakdown of how erroneous some of those figures that were being bandied around were, how erroneous they were, and the percentages and all that. I think for that, I think the thing backfired in as much as the media called out whoever wrote that speech or whoever read it. I mean, they called out and told that this is not the way that it should have been. You know, you should have done a better job. When it comes to polling, I mean, I don't know whether I mean, it's the science of opinion polls. I don't know how well we've done it in this country, or that study, or whether we teach it at the university, or whether it's just statistics, or there's only one gentleman in this country we believe in because of his color. And sometimes I think that I mean, I tweeted the other day that where is he when we need him most? Like right now, he should be telling us that actually 99% of the teachers have agreed to go back to school. He should be telling us that, and I would not be surprised if he told us that now. So I think we need to do much more, not as the media, because we are going to invest in data journalism. Where are we going to get the data, first of all, to start crunching? You see. So
I guess the question would be, once we're given the figures, do we run? Are we so quick to break the story?
No, sometimes we run them as news. We just run it as news, and then we let the people start questioning them out there. And I don't think that one also you'd blame as much, because okay, fine, you've given us the figures. Even if we said those are his figures, we're not going to doubt them. I mean, because he's given us his figures and all that, so we run them as news. Okay.
Yeah. Well, your take on data journalism?
We are very low. I don't know of a single Kenyan media house that has invested in data journalism. What we've had are patches of courses where you send editors or uninterested reporters to go and pursue some knowledge. But this needs a lot of critical interrogation. Because when you're talking about raising VAT, and I saw my good friend Bill Okero, the Mandera senator, taking on the president and telling him, your guys have their figures wrong. VAT, what you are saying was raised by Kera is even erroneous. So it means even those who prepare the president's speech have their facts wrong. If the president, with all the resources and our taxes at his disposal, can get figures wrong, what about an ordinary reporter in the newsroom? But that does not mean we should get away with the wrong facts and figures. We must start investing in data journalism, knowing back where we can backstop, and have experts work with us, so that when you're writing about VAT figures, there is an authentic library with authentic figures, and you can verify this is actually what was raised. Unless we do that, we will still make same mistakes. But my overall analysis of the strike still boils down to the fact that this administration has been poor in communication crisis. Look at Westgate, look at health workers strike. You always have conflicting statements from the minister, from the president, from the deputy president, from the speaker of the National Assembly. You don't know who to believe, and they've got it all wrong. And in the teachers' crisis, they are making it even worse.
No, when it comes to this data journalism, yes, we need to invest in that, but. Also, you see, like even these other media organizations, the international media organizations, even when they actually do their own polls, they actually do it with other bodies outside the newsroom.
They partner,
yeah, but it's those people. I mean, like they commission, and it's those guys who do the polling. So what I meant to say is that out there, do we have the science of opinion polling? It's called sociology. I mean, how good are we in it as a country, first of all, before the media gets these numbers to start crunching,
And to add to what he's saying, there seems to be a bias towards just political polling. You rarely see polling on other issues. And right now,
like as mentioned, we should have polls on what teachers
are teachers thinking, and or what's the public thinking about this issue. We don't get enough polling on that. But also, I mean, a block to it is expense. It's quite expensive to do this polling, and there should be more variety. As I said, there's only one person who we get to see reports from. It would be good to hear from other people, and there are other organizations that do polling, so maybe we need to engage them as well.
At the university level, do we have anything that is coming to address that, or are we going to have this cycle carried?
I actually teach in my classes polling, reporting on polling, so we do have classes on that. The problem is, as you're saying, there's just not enough of it. There's just not enough of it to interrogate, and when it's taken out there, we don't get enough information. I mean, a very good point to know is who pays for this polling. This political polling can always tell a lot about a poll by who paid for it, but we never get that information. Yeah.
So there could be an angle to whoever is paying for it could influence the figures.
Of course, that will tell you a lot. Who is paying for it?
Statistically, is it proved that figures can actually change how people think, or?
Yeah, they influence perception to some level, but there are questions that are scientific questions like, what is the size of the sample? Is it representative? Is it random sampling, or is it stratified sampling? Those are basic questions journalists must start asking. How, when you prime questions, what I call irrelevant and educated questions like, should so-and-so be running for presidency? I mean, then those are not helping the country. There are better ways we can make polls contribute to this country in a positive way, not derogatory manner, trying to prime individuals and target them for public measure that they are not popular or not. Why, for example, can't we have an opinion poll telling us about approval about the presidency today when there is a national crisis? Why do it when there is not a national crisis? And those, those are begging questions, and it tells you there is every motive behind every opinion poll.
But I think one time I think there's a very senior journalist in this country is retired. He did give a memo to the media house on how to cover opinion polls, and probably now that he's retired, maybe that's why, I mean, the other media house went quite big on this polling thing. But it was about asking the questions, the same questions that we're talking about, like, okay, fine, what is the motive of this? I mean, who is behind this poll and all that? And sometimes, yes, as you're saying about the type of, we should call these guys out on, and this time actually, I think people really raised a lot of questions, and I think even the media did raise questions, or rather, people wrote stories about the polling and the media carried them. What you should be asking is, like, you cannot be asking the same question all the time, and if you ask, you cannot be asking a question about one person, like when it's approval rating, maybe like, let's say now about presidential candidates in the US, you rank all the 16 of them, you know, so you cannot be asking one question about one particular person
and not 15 others,
and 15 others, you know. And also this question, I mean, from what probably I understand, is that people retire from an office, not from an activity. You see, you can retire from being a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, but that does not stop you from probably continuing, maybe giving lectures in your house or something like that. So you're saying that retire from politics. What is politics?
Some of the questions are not clear.
So for me, the question
the constitution is clear.
The question probably makes sense if you ask, like, should you retire from elective politics, you know? You say from elective politics, but you cannot say, like, retire from politics, you know, because you're not holding any office.
Okay, so Kilemi, maybe to move forward, what then do we need to do in terms of polls? Do we need to question them? Do we need to shelve them and let the pollsters, you know, just handle them on their own without us necessarily as a media giving them that coverage?
I think what we're doing on this show needs to be done on a national level. You need to question, find out what kind of questions were asked. As I said, you can prime somebody. I can make you give me a certain answer by asking a question in a certain way.
In a certain way.
Yeah. How big was the sample? All those things need to be asked. And also, we need to find out how we can get more polling out there, more varieties of polls, and more frequency of polls. We need to find out why is it that we only get, maybe there are some limitations that we don't know about that make it maybe expensive or whatever reason that we don't see more polling done.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, going back to David's assertion about data journalism, I think because we also get figures from Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, KNBS, and how well we use these figures, because like based on, it's only yesterday when Ashiundu actually referred to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the figures, because I want to believe those ones, we should believe them more, the ones from the government, because that is actually the parental authorities agency charged with giving us the stats. You know?
All right.
So those ones also, I think we should be falling back on those ones when we're asking these other questions about this the other polls. We should be falling back on the figures, like you did in that story we wrote yesterday. That you cannot say that 1.5% of the population consume 52%, because first of all, 42% of the population is actually under 19, so they don't work, you know, things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So
questioning them. All right, Ohito, in terms of now the teacher strike, is there anything that has not been covered that needs to be highlighted? We've mentioned there's the plight of the children, seems not to be taking center stage yet. They're the ones who are suffering most. What else might we have left out as we conclude on the teacher strike?
We need to know what this has cost the Kenyan economy. If you ask me, the only place where children don't go to school are failed states, and we are edging in that direction at a very terrific speed. The only country we are entering the Guinness Book of Records where school is banned by the government is Kenya. You know, and these are questions we must start raising. You know, what is the difference between us and Burundi and Somalia now? Because they don't go to school like our children don't go to school. And how on earth could we allow them to even purport to be shutting private schools? Because that for me was a very dangerous thought line. Because the next thing they will say, we are now shutting private hospitals because nurses are on strike and doctors are on strike. So we shut down Nairobi Hospital, shut down Mata, Mpisha, all these hospitals. And then the next day they say, if you're not driving a GK, don't be on the road. Those, you know, are very telling statements, and I think we must hold government accountable that perhaps there's time. If you have a minister who cannot sit down to trade unions, I mean, what good does it have? We've had labor minister who has remained nail by mouth all this time. What is really happening? So we must press these guys, ask the hard questions, you know. So what does it tell you when your president is in a foreign state, very well goes to the US, for example, and back home children are not going to school? And then you tell investors, you know, we have good investment climate. Those are questions we must continue raising.
Also to add to what he's saying, it seems that the education ministry is stumbling from one crisis to another. Every time they seem to get up, they fall back and down again. We have the issue of help, which could be going to the government saying they don't have any money. So that could be helping the argument, but every single time when we think everything is clear, Kemeni has another scandal he has to handle. So, I mean, that's another story. The education ministry has been in the news for the last 2 years. It doesn't go a month.
I think that's exactly what I was talking about, what Kemeni actually has been doing. Every time the education ministry is in the news for the wrong reasons, the people who suffer are the children. And the way, what I meant is that the way this government is mistreating children, it is actually in the education sector. Because right now, what you're not asking is, yes, we revised term dates, opening 31st August. Actually, schools did not open on 31st August. They opened on 3rd September. You see, the circular from the government was 31st August, revised term dates 31st August to 21st September. That was the day before yesterday. So what we're not asking is, okay, fine. So have we closed schools for the rest of the term? 3rd term, are schools closed? That now 3rd term is over. We're not being told, we're not even asking like, okay, fine, so what next? So I think those are some of the gaps that actually, maybe I think, which we're not calling, because yes, we are happy, or maybe the other people with their kids in private schools are happy that, okay, fine, private schools went to court and they got a reprieve and all that. But actually what is happening is, the government could be right, because they could be saying that actually schools have closed. We have closed schools for the term. Going forward now, you close schools for 3rd term. How is the education calendar going to be? Going forward, how, I mean, it is December, we are going towards December. How are the education, yes, how is it going to be? First of all, we need to understand that the current school calendar, we have it this way because of a previous strike. That's why it was structured that this way.
In addition, there's a laptop project. You know, they're depending on teachers to implement the laptop project. So is there going to be the goodwill among the teachers to do it? Because you might bring this new equipment in, and the teachers just are not into it.
But even on that, we also got facts wrong, that 95% of schools have been connected to power. Maybe schools in Gatundu and Eldoret North, not in Kenya. Do a simple sample. Those schools have no electricity. So I think we are letting the government get away with very flimsy excuses.
Okay, so again, going back to the figures and literally questioning those figures, because like you say, the statement was 95% of schools. So is that true? Is that fact?
It's not
and
true.
It would be interesting to see even those pollsters literally now challenge that and give us the polls. Let's move on to something else. And Monday, I believe it was exactly 2 years after the Westgate siege. And I don't know, Mwenda, did you feel like we highlighted our progress, what we have done so far, especially taking advantage of that particular day, just to remind us where we've come from, and some of the questions maybe that are still looming that have never been answered. For instance, the mattresses and many others.
The what?
The mattresses, the banning mattresses.
The banning mattresses. I don't think we have. I think that story is just forgotten. I think once the mall was open, everybody was more than happy to just bury it and move on, which is not right. I think more needs to be looked at, especially about that mall. They meant to look at the opening, but they've not shown us what happened where the...
Although I'll be quick to say, we had actually planned, if it had worked out, to have our program aired from Westgate Mall on Monday, but it didn't work out because the management somehow apparently did not want too much publicity. I also read an article on Saturday written by a lady who had tried to also do some pictures and do a story telling us, because right now when you think of Westgate Mall, all we see is the smoke. We don't see much of what it is right now, and she was stopped by the PRO to do that, and of course it seems like the management were not too keen to have the mall advertised or even talked about.
Michael, I have several questions, and I keep telling Clay, I think my time to leave the newsroom has come. We didn't ask the right questions.
Right at the beginning.
Yes. Neither have we asked them 2 years later on.
In terms of Westgate?
Yes. What really transpired? I read a very comprehensive piece by Foreign Policy magazine, a journalist who spent about 6 months trying to just reconstruct what happened. And in the analysis, the terror attack lasted no more than 4 hours. That story we haven't told. We've not even asked, where did Olelenku go? Those are basic questions. At least Karangi, we know he retired from the armed forces. So there was a commission of inquiry to be constituted. What happened to it? Was it that hot air? What really did it cost us as a country? We have not asked the right questions about Westgate 2 years later on. What we spent time doing was how we witnessed smoke coming out, and for me, that we failed Kenya.
I think, yes, as I'm saying, people seem to want to forget what happened and just move on, and they don't want to ask those questions which need to be asked. Another question is what happened to those families that were affected by this?
There any compensation?
Yeah, they said they'll be compensated. What happened to them? Where are they now?
At least I saw some stories of some who got some money and even started businesses based on the money that was given, as goodwill from citizens. But I guess, yes, there could be more questions asked to those who... And
there are even positive stories. I know of people who used to work there, places like Ashley's, who are going back. So, I mean, there are many angles to these stories that we could tell.
I think we are spending more time on the building than on
the people.
What happened, yeah, because like this young lady who was complaining, she was actually complaining about being denied access to the building or whatever it is. But what if the building was brought down? I mean, we still talk about the U.S. embassy bombing. The embassy is not there anymore. I mean, so we should. I think we should have asked, what we should be asking questions about state of security and actually what happened to the families and all that, whether the building is there or not. Because for me, it's not. We should stop spending so much time. There's this thing we're getting, this culture we're getting into about malling, about malls. You know, oh, the Westgate Mall is open, so it's about, oh, I was denied access to Westgate Mall. It was not that. I've not had somebody saying that I was denied access. I went to try and get the families, and one family refused to talk to me and stuff like that. We're more about the physical structure, the building itself. Right now, we cannot get any evidence of the building because actually it's been painted, it's been rebuilt, it's been refurbished and everything. I think what we need to do is the social angle of it, and leave out the real estate. I mean, as in the building, talk about the social angle.
Look at more of the families.
Yes, and how they're probably coping. I mean, yes, this is, I was in some meeting yesterday, I mean, and we discussed it. And I think I told one of my writers, actually, we are looking for some of the families to see how they're coping, starting yesterday. So I think this is what we need to do, and also in the process we need to interrogate, like, okay, fine, so how well or how badly is our security apparatus, or what did they learn from that, or what did we learn from that attack? You know, how prepared, badly or well prepared are we from since that time? So these are some of the questions actually that we should be asking, and actually do an evaluation and find out, okay, fine, like disaster preparedness that time, and now probably preparedness to respond to these attacks that time and now, because even after that we still had another crisis. We still had another crisis, and actually we go back to the same thing. Some children, again, the government failed them in Garissa, you know. So these are some of the things that we should be asking.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be about, like, okay, fine, so are they open mall? Have we built another mall? I mean,
but coverage of the security in the country, I think that has been good. We've been covering what the government is doing in terms of security, and that
we cover what the government is doing. From the newsroom point of view, we cover what the government is doing, because what the government is giving us.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But I think having criticized the government all morning, let's give them credit that there has been a lot of security intelligence going the right direction for the first time. We have seen less of attacks, and I think in partnership,
actually, we're just saying, like, we should what
we can do better.
What the media should be doing is we should be finding out how well, or what did we learn. Were the lessons good? Were they bad lessons? I mean, going forward, what can we do better, or probably what have we done so much that we probably need to scale down? So no, we need to evaluate. I mean, the lessons that actually we learned from that process, instead of spending so much time on real estate.
They made a really big issue about that Safaricom tender that they want for securing the what happened?
What happened?
Yeah.
I mean,
we talked about that
there are cameras all over the place. I don't even know which ones belong to NTSA, which ones belong to Kidero, which ones belong to Safaricom. Actually, that's how they are called.
I think in terms of that, I've actually been trying to follow up to even find out how the CCTV network works.
Yes.
But to even find who would speak. I've talked to the county government, and they said, no, we're not responsible. All we did was facilitate. They referred me to the police. I went to the police, and still trying to get the police spokesman, because apparently they have a security angle which they would not want the public to know for whatever reason. So again, getting that information is not that easy, and it takes time, but I guess that's something that we're still working on. And maybe moving on to something else, and the opposition had put a motion, or have said that they're going to impeach the president. And have we done our part in terms of letting the public know if this is a possibility, or if it's just rhetoric, if it's something that is possible given the numbers, to put the figures in place so that we paint the real picture? Is this just the opposition talking, or is this something that is possible?
I think from a layman's perspective, I'd like to see well, I've not seen it yet. Somebody tell us, what does it take to impeach someone? What are the rules that govern an impeachment? The basics. I would like to know the basics. People would like to know the basics, so we understand exactly what it takes for that to happen.
I told you to get off social media and get to mainstream media, because immediately this thing was announced, one of the papers actually broke it down and actually gave a process and how it is supposed to, whatever happened, I mean, how it is outlined in the Constitution, and they also gave other examples, like some years back when I think it was the CIA senators, the current CIA senator tried to have, was it not the president, I think it was the late Judge Saitoti or something like that. Yeah, so it's been done. So they did give a breakdown. The media did give a breakdown of actually how the process as outlined in the Constitution. Yeah.
Okay. And I think
but going forward, anyway, if I were in charge of the desk, that's a story I would have killed.
The process?
No, the story about like, yeah, we are going to impeach, I could have killed it because...
Why would you kill it?
I kill stories.
Hito, would you be of the opinion to kill it, or is it something that needs to be told? Also to give us the gravitas of the situation we're in as a country.
I think the opposition are rightly doing their work. Their work is to make government be on its toes, to be wake up. And you could see the reaction came in just minutes from the government troops. That tells you the opposition is beginning to do its work. But whether they can really go and have a successful impeachment process with proper grounds that meets constitutional threshold is a different story. And we know numbers don't favor them. Not even when there's a national crisis that really puts the government confidence at minus like we have today. What we saw again, quite a number of those in opposition ranks being on the presidential trip to New York, and which tells you just hot air to keep Kenyans, busy, knowing we are doing something, but anyway we don't mean what we were saying.
I would like to just to disagree with you. I mean, being on the trip to like New York, because that one is United Nations, United Nations General Assembly. It's not a private visit, so some of the opposition members, some of the members
because of virtue of their positions.
Yes, they've gone there by virtue of their positions in Parliament, or in those parliamentary committees actually, which also don't make sense because they don't do anything. Yeah, they're just there, they're talking shops. Yeah, actually, they used to call NGOs talking shops, and nowadays Parliament is more of a talking shop than even the NGOs. Yeah, so that's the thing. I would have killed that story because it's a joke.
A joke because it's not possible, or a joke one?
No, and yes, the opposition is doing what it does and all that, and also the reaction was swift and all that. But sometimes I think we give these politicians too much leeway, where they crack their jokes on the other side, and then we go to town with it, and then the other side comes and starts reacting over that joke, and we go to town with it. And
would you have also then killed Babu Namwamba's story in terms of the legislators taking 50% of the
actually, let me tell you the kind of stories I would have killed this week. The president's speech on Sunday, if it were a story written as a story by a reporter, could have killed it because there was nothing new. You see, it was that is not something that I could have published in the paper. If it was actually that the reporter went out and brought me this story as a reporter, and I could have killed. Babu Namwamba's thing is this one also is we know very well that this guy is fought tooth and nail a few months ago, or several months ago, to increase their salaries, and actually he never objected at all. There has been, between that time and now, there has been this thing like, oh, let's reduce our wage bill and all that. I never had any of those MPs saying like, oh, actually, we agree, the wage bill is so high, let's reduce it. So right now, he's telling us that there's a crisis now. He wants the same people actually who are almost selling their parents to get their salaries increased. Now they're ready, like, okay, fine, now they're ready to reduce their salaries to 50%, by 50%. And actually also, I think there must be a procedure. They keep on talking about SRC and all that. So I think it was a big joke because he talked about it, and 2 hours, before the ink on the thing dried, the guy was already on he was already on a flight to New York.
It was a smart move on his part because he knew it was not going to go through.
But is it really smart? Is that playing on Kenyans'
it's populist. It's populist, but populism works. Back to the point he made about the opposition, I think the opposition in general, a story that needs to be told, is very reactionary. They don't set their own agenda. They react to what's happening, and then they make a big deal out of it. They get some ground, and then it dies out. Something new happens, and they react to it. It's very few instances where they set their own agenda and they push it through.
No, actually, it's not the position. It's both sides in Kenyan politics. Politicians in Kenya are very reactionary. Like, even if right now, yeah, both of them react that way. Right? Look at how the so-called government politicians have reacted to what Ababu Namaba said as the opposition. So everybody, they react.
We are reactionary society.
Yes, and then
Ohito,
we fall into this
salary
trap.
Let me bring in Ohito into this. And the question, Ohito, would be, as journalists, when we take a story like that, do we do justice to our space on our papers and airtime to air something that possibly we know may not even have any
impact,
light of day?
I think that is our folly, and we must start being a little more strict with our airtime in newspaper space. If Babu ever filed that, what we should have asked, where have in previous attempts? At one time there was a very flashy news bulletin about President and Deputy taking pay cuts. There has been no evidence since, neither have we followed up that did the two gentlemen ever take a pay cut. There's no evidence so far.
And how much money was really
and how much was the pay cut? You can take a pay cut of cents or 1 shilling. It doesn't make a difference. So I think we need to start interrogating some of these statements deeper. But they get away with them. And I had a very bad experience about 2 weeks ago when I met a top corporate leader, and he told me he doesn't prepare when he's going to meet a Kenyan journalist because he knows he can ask any question which does not even make sense, that he will get away, and he can also utter words which don't make sense and walk away. So I think it shows the level of quality of our journalism, and we must start tightening the bolts now. Are we asking the right questions? Would a news source get away with statements like they always do?
Okay. When I guess the honors our new being a lecturer to ensure that we churn out journalists that now are asking the right questions.
But the questions are being asked. I mean, the questions have already been asked. Everybody reacted the same way. Most journalists asked, is it serious? Are you really saying this? Sometimes you can be a bit too critical on journalists.
On ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to something else, and let's look at regional news. There is the elections that's coming up in Tanzania. In terms of coverage, I know KTN is doing quite a lot on that. We have Ben Kitili in TZ bringing us updates. But generally, have we covered the region? Have we got enough info from the region to find out what's going on?
What's standing out for me is the fact that the Congo, DRC, they're going to push for a referendum so that the president can have that term. And we have seen Burundi, we have seen Rwanda. Yeah, so what's happening in East Africa with these issues in Uganda?
Uganda, third term or life?
Yeah.
So, forever.
So we're seeing this issue of leaders just wanting to stick around, and the talk of democracy really holding down. That's not the case. So I mean, that's another aspect we look at while we're reporting on Tanzania.
Okay, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, actually. I mean, teachers in those countries still earn less than our teachers, you know.
In terms of figures, looking at the figures again.
I think covering Tanzania, I think we would probably do a lot of justice if we would cover it, not cover it with our Kenyan euphoria of covering. We need to understand the region. We need to understand the people there before we probably start banding around figures. And I want to believe that our guys who went there are actually going to probably work with the locals to understand the dynamics of politics in Tanzania and stuff like that. And sometimes, I mean, a few months ago, we had all these things about where we were talking about so-and-so. We already knew who was going to win the CCM nomination and all that, based on how we
covered it.
No, based on how we understand Kenyan politics, and we lift it and take it to that place, and we know like that guy is going to win, and then it never worked. You see? So I think, yes, it's good to make Kenyans aware of what happens in those other places, because the funny thing is that those guys know what happens here, based on the fact that you can access through DSTV, you can access KTN in TZ and Uganda, and also, but you cannot access those Ugandan channels here. So we are quite ignorant about what happens in those other countries, but those guys know. I mean, they can actually tell you the tribe of so and so, and we don't even know. If I asked you right now, right away, like, what is the tribe of Museveni, you will not tell me, you know, but those guys probably
they're quite knowledgeable about our politics.
You know.
That is very true.
Yeah, and I think going there, we need to go there and work with the locals. Yes, but still be inquisitive. Still be journalists. Not that now whatever the locals tell us, we report that as gospel truth. But just to help us understand the region, we need to work more with the people on the ground there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Hito, in terms of coverage of the region, have we done as we could, especially now as Kenyan journalists? I'm sure there are other journalists who are probably the international journalists from all over covering the elections. But do we have that sense of the region as Kenyan journalists?
You know, our journalism is also influenced by our audiences. So we tend to try and interest our audiences. Yes, we have media houses that have presence all over the region, and they're trying to produce products that have that regional audience stratified pretty well. But how do we even talk about the region when we can't even cover Kenya comprehensively at about 60%? We have not devolved even locally, and that brings in the challenge. And then you have the bigger problem for our journalists who will cover the Tanzanian elections, because it's very different from the Kenyan one. They don't talk about tribes, so there's no question about my community is in an alliance with this other community. So we need to bring out what are the issues. We must move away from, I've seen a lot of the crowd journalism, what I know, those pictures depicting, you know, several heads at a political rally, and start assuming that one party has a bigger edge over the other one. And we also had a very interesting opinion poll about the Tanzanian election also.
It was done by our own people.
No, it was done by Ipsos.
I mean by Ipsos.
They're not our own people.
That is ours. I mean, as in Kenya.
It's an enterprise, it's a profiteering institution. So
they did, and they said who's going to win?
CCM. They favored CCM in their outcome. But I think this chance to look at what are the issues in Tanzania, which is the best candidate. We are moving towards regional integration. What happens when this candidate is elected as opposed to the other one? I think those are pertinent questions that we need to address. On, say, South Sudan, for example, we are told there's a catch of arms at the port, and there are all indications that it was heading that direction. How will that impact the politics of the region, stability and security of the region? Those are the pertinent questions we should be asking. With East Africa now replacing West Africa as having the longest presidential terms, what does this mean for the region? Those are begging questions we must start asking. Just when will Yoweri Kaguta Museveni exit? When will Paul Kagame exit? When will Nkurunziza exit? These are questions. What happens when we in Kenya we are confronted with a situation of a guy who wants to extend his term in office? Those are begging questions
that we must continue
asking. I think our coverage of the region, David is very right, is that we don't. And it's because of, I mean, it is in whatever it's informed by the audience. So I think we spend so much time on us, and we don't have, can I call them Pan-African journalists? You know, we don't have very many of them. I mean, people who can actually authoritatively speak about the situation in Uganda and the situation. So we tend to rely, like one thing you mentioned, like foreign papers. I mean, non-African journalists, like the foreign policy and all that. The analysis of the situation in Africa is probably better. You know, is probably in depth and all that. And I think all this also is informed by investment into this kind of, like, you can get a journalist from New York coming probably to Nairobi to do a story, which is probably 1,200 words, and spending a month. Can you actually go to Tanzania or to Uganda or to South Sudan and all that to investigate one story? And I mean, I don't know that it's informed by the economy, but I think we've also not, matter of course, we've also not invested so much into that, and we tend, I keep on saying this, we tend to lack a world view, you see. So we want to carry things from, like, Kenya, I mean, tribal politics determine, tribes determine how the outcome of elections, and that's something that we want to go to Tanzania and try to understand.
And to add something, just something small, in class we always teach news is local. So we always have to find a way of making whatever's happening out there be relevant to
Whoever
the
you're
Kenyans.
reporting to.
So all those issues we've just discussed, it would be good to find out how is that relevant to Kenyans, you know.
You talked about EAC integration,
Yes.
actually, and that is what makes all this now relevant here, because here's
And
a
that's
case
why
where we are trying to break down the borders.
So what does it mean for all of us?
Right.
Yeah, while we do all the stories.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll have to wind it up right there. David Ohito, who is a digital editor here at The Standard. We also have Mwenda Kilemi, who is a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, lecturing in the communications department, and Clay Muganda, who is also an editor here with The Standard. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And that is where we wind up Morning Express this morning. Thank you for keeping us company. Do stand by. For those of us on KTN News, I wish you rather stand by for Betty Chalo, who's coming up with the news. For those of us on KTN Home, have yourselves a wonderful day. God bless.
Thank you.